Why don't you come up, Dale?
I'll
Dale
come
Ahlquist from the Chesterton Society. This is, I think, Dale's second shot at our guild. He was about 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
Spoke over at Holy Cross, and he was a big hit over there. So
Well, I think it's
We're
been
looking-
long enough that everyone forgot what I said then.
that's true.
so
You
I
could
can-
probably
I
say
can say the same
some
thing.
of those same jokes. Yeah. No. I'm just, well, thank you.
Great,
Thanks
you,
for taking
Russ.
time out.
Thank you. And let's hear it for Roger for all the great work he's done. I mean, it's just amazing. He is an inspiration, a gentleman who sold his company and just devoted himself to implementing Catholic social teaching, which is what this is all about. So I'm really grateful to be here to be part of this. So I'm going to make a few general comments, and then I'd like to really open it up for questions and whatever it is you want to hear me talk about or ask about or harass me about. I want to give you that opportunity. So I'm here to be taken advantage of, okay? So G.K. Chesterton is one of the first and early articulate promoters of Catholic social teaching after the encyclical of Pope Leo the 13th back in 1896, Rerum Novarum. And the importance of that encyclical seems to increase every year. And even in my lifetime, so when I first started reading Chesterton 45 years ago, and that was 45 years ago this month, because my wedding anniversary is this month, and of course I started reading Chesterton on my honeymoon like everybody else does. But even then, there were very few people interested in Chesterton. But as the interest in revival of interest in Chesterton grew, slowly people started talking about this one aspect of G.K. Chesterton, which he called distributism, a nasty word, and we'll talk about that. But that was something that people were very reluctant to talk about because there were just only two ideas. There was capitalism and there was socialism/communism. If you weren't one, you were definitely the other then, because if you criticized the one, you must have been the other. And that very narrow and compartmentalized thinking really has been the plague of any serious social reform in our country or in the Western world. But now, after decades, people are taking these ideas seriously again, and the origin of them is Pope Leo the 13th. And he was writing about the Industrial Revolution of the late 19th century and really the evils that it had inflicted on society with just the abuse of the laborers and a condition which he said was no better than slavery. And wage slavery is called wage slavery because it's slavery. And he said only a few people actually were owners. Everybody else was working for them. They were being paid such a low wage that they could never really accomplish anything. That never had enough money to be independent, and it had created horrible social conditions, urban tragedies, child labor. People had left the country thinking they were going to achieve a easier way of life, and they achieved a much more horrendous form of life that really had a horrible impact on the family unit itself, not just separating father from children, but separating mother from children too. And so it resulted in the breakup of the family, an attack on the family. And the horrible conditions were so obvious that everyone knew that there had to be a better solution. The natural reaction was socialism. There had to be, you had to get away from the rich owner who was abusing everything and make all property publicly controlled so that everybody had a fair wage, which was essentially the same thing. It was just another wage system under communism and slash socialism. So Pope Leo, very wisely, even as he condemned the industrial system, said the wrong solution is socialism. So he attacked both systems in the same encyclical. And he said the solution is for more workers to become owners. For more workers to become owners so that they would have a stake in the wealth that was being created by whatever the enterprise was. And that would make for a more just society if more people were owners. So you see, it's not socialism because it's not the state controlling things, but it's not capitalism because capitalism is really monopoly. It's really just a few people owning everything and the majority of the people working for the minority. One side has the money and the other has to depend on that small side with the money. But with many owners, there is a more stable society, and you have a sense of community where people start actually taking care of each other. And that's what a guild system is. It's actually a medieval system. Most of the answers to a better society can be found in the High Middle Ages. And Chesterton says that, to use the word medieval, it's always used as a form of abuse. Well, that's medieval. It's just to be dismissive. And what came out of the Middle Ages? Well, the printing press, the cathedrals, the universities, hospitals, a republican form of government in terms of a parliamentary or congressional form of government which represented people on a wide basis. All of the great strengths of Western civilization were achieved and really hit their high point in the Middle Ages. And one of the reasons for that success was the guild system, where workers had a trade and they were good at their trade. It was a craft that they learned. And that craft was then passed on from one generation to the next. And people took a pride in their work and they owned their own business. But the guild would always also watch out for each other, and they always prevent anybody from getting a monopoly or a corner on the market. And so it was a more just and well-distributed system. Pope Leo, in his encyclical, says justice should be distributive. In other words, everyone is entitled to justice. Well, Hilaire Belloc, Chesterton's great colleague and equal genius and prolific writer, he came up with the term distributism to describe that kind of a social idea, just based on that one phrase from Pope Leo. All of the group of people who were trying to implement this idea of social justice all realized it was a really bad name. And they all complained about it, and they said, yeah, we need a better name. But they never came up with one. And so the years went by, and distributism, had its moments where it was, more prominent than other times, but it was pretty much set aside and dismissed because the capitalists dismissed it as socialism, which is a complete misrepresentation of it, to call it socialism. And the socialists dismissed it because it actually meant ownership, which is just the opposite of what socialism is. And then both sides also dismissed it because it was just too Catholic. It's too icky. It was Catholic. And it was medieval. And so it went through a period of really being just dismissed as a footnote. And when I had the great privilege of getting involved in starting the Chesterton Society, we always had one aspect of what we wrote about, besides writing about Catholic apologetics and Chesterton's great approach to philosophy and literature. complete thinker. He wrote about everything. He even wrote mystery stories. I mean, how more complete could you be? But he also wrote about economics and politics. And that was the thing, well, some people were interested in that. Some people, that's all they were interested in. That's the only thing they wanted to talk about. And that's what happens with politics. That's the only thing they want to talk about. And of course, they become deranged. And one of Chesterton's great points is that everything is connected to everything else. Your politics should not contradict your religion. And it shouldn't contradict your philosophy. It shouldn't even contradict your views on art and beauty. You should have a complete way of thinking that you can defend from all angles. And really, it's only the Catholic Church that can be defended from all angles. It addresses everything, and it has to defend itself against attacks from all sides, all the time. It's always the thing that's being attacked for one reason or the other. It's being attacked as being too extravagant and being too austere at the same time. It's attacked for being too big and low and centralized, and also for being too small and scattered. It's attacked for its ornate beauty and also for its austerity. It's attacked for insisting on celibacy and also for insisting on birth. It insists on both those things at once, and no one knows what to do with it. Well, it insists on justice. That's what it also insists on, a just society, an ordered society. And that if people actually do love God and love their neighbor, fulfilling the two great commandments, you will have a just society. That means the way you spend your money is a social and moral act. And your money should help your neighbor. It shouldn't help some remote entity far away. And your actions should be controlled locally and not be controlled by some remote entity far away. And so one of the terms that had been suggested as an alternative term for distributism was decentralization. And that's a very good word and a very descriptive word to characterize what we mean by it. But the problem with decentralization is it's a negative word. It kind of says what you're against. It doesn't say what you're for. Just as if you identify yourself as a Protestant, you're only identifying yourself by what you're protesting against, right? And if you identify yourself as an atheist, well, you're just identifying yourself by God, aren't you? And that's not the thing you want to talk about when you're an atheist. But it's hard to even portray a positive form of atheism. It's a difficult thing to do, so it's much easier just to be an atheist, especially because you're only 2% of the population. All right, so we had to come up with a better term. So the Brain Trust got together, my 4 sons and me. And this was after 20 years earlier, the Chesterton Society said, we need a new name for distributism. Let's have a contest. We'll give a t-shirt to the winner who comes up with the best name. And we didn't even have make any suggestions. The t-shirt went unclaimed. Only one suggestion would have been enough to win the t-shirt. So we decided, what is the positive thing that we have to really emphasize to make people think differently? And we came up with the term localism. And the reason's pretty clear. Chesterton says you have to keep everything local because, just as the Catholic Church teaches in Catholic social teaching, the term subsidiarity, another great word that's misunderstood. If you say it too many times, people get angry. Subsidiarity means that the thing that most affects you you should be able to control. The thing that most directly affects you, you should be able to control. So that means the laws should be local. And you should have a hand in making those laws, or at least criticizing and monitoring those laws, because you're the one who's most directly affected by them. But if the laws are made remotely, you have really no power, do you? You are powerless over laws that are made remotely. Chesterton says you should keep your politicians close enough to kick them. But the whole idea is accountability. The politicians should be accountable, and if they're local, they are accountable. And so politically, localism makes a lot of sense. But commercially, it really makes sense that in the world of trade and business, your dollars should be kept local. Your dollars should be going to your neighbor. They shouldn't be going out of the community to some remote, centralized corporation. So all of the arguments against big government are the same arguments against big business. They're all the same. And yet, in the political world, you have left and right always tends to defend big business, and left always tends to defend big government, but in essence, they are defending the same thing, because, as Chesterton says, it's Hudge and Gudge. And Gudge is big business, and Hudge is big government. He says they're married. It's an unholy marriage, and they are in conspiracy against the common person. And the common person has no voice against big government and big business at the same time. The solution? Small business, local social entities, doing things ourselves rather than having them done for us by someone else. The developments of crafts and trades and artisans, and a better quality of material, because things are going to be made to last and not manufactured. It's a funny word. The word manufactured does mean handmade. It's just the opposite. But we live in a throwaway society, because people they just worship a dollar figure. They want to buy something cheap, and so they buy something worthless. And so we came up with the term localism. We've started pushing it, and people are starting to respond now. The old guard distributists, all 3 or 4 of them, are unhappy with the name change. But we're going to try to outlive them. That's our plan. So localism makes sense, and it certainly makes sense for the guild idea. We're all small businesses here. That's who we represent. We're local businesses, and we're here, to do business with each other. But the Catholic aspect of it is equally important, because if Catholics act together and live together, do commerce together, we start forming a solidarity together. And the 2 principles of Catholic social teaching are subsidiarity, which I explained, having control over the thing that affects you, and solidarity, that we're all in it together. And we actually are here to help each other, to represent the same thing. And what's the thing we want to do? Well, we want to spread the word of God. We want to evangelize. We want to proclaim the gospel. We want to save souls. And that's not just the work of priests. It's the work of the Catholic layperson. We might be the only thing of the Catholic Church that anybody in your neighborhood ever sees. It doesn't matter who the Pope or the Bishop is. It matters who you are. You represent the Catholic Church to your neighbor. And they when they look at you, what we want them to see is, I want what he has. I want what he has. So that not only just our lifestyle, our joy, our love, yes, always, but also the way we do business, the way we conduct our trades, the way we support each other. And there's such a great potential for strength in what Roger has put together with the St. Joseph's Business Guild. It's helping us form a Catholic community in the Twin Cities. And if this idea can be replicated in other cities, we can start affecting the culture locally across the country. Now, you may be aware of my own role in doing that. I helped get a Catholic school started, Chesterton Academy. And it's because we're a group of parents, so we want to control how our children are educated. We're not happy with any of the options that are out there. We want the Catholic faith taught, not just in a religion class, but in every class. That every class reflects a Catholic understanding. But we want it to also reflect a classical understanding, that what we're teaching is not the latest fashion and the latest idea, but truth that has been passed on from one generation to the other. The truth that never stops being true. It's found in classical literature, classical art, and in theology and philosophy. We teach philosophy. Most high schools don't teach any philosophy. So students don't even know how to think. We take them through the rigors of logic, but we also give them a love of wisdom. And, we teach art. We take the arts very importantly, because that's what the Catholic Church has always done. And it's not, here's some paint, express yourself. No, it's, here's this, and you're going to draw that, and when you're done, it's going to look like that. Got it? Chump? And after 4 years, they're making oil masterpieces. They're copying oil masterpieces. They learn how to sing. They give glory to God with their voices. They learn how to act, because the stage is truly an incarnational experience. It's bringing the flesh, the word into flesh. And students gain a confidence. They know how to express themselves. We teach them the truth, but we also have to teach them how to express the truth. And we have daily Mass, center of the day, the body of Christ. And so that's what we did with our first school. And now that school, that model has been replicated all across the country, in other countries. There's over 70 Chesterton schools open right now. There's 30 more in the pipeline. We'll have 100 schools in the next 3 years. But you know what? It's not that, oh great, we're setting these schools. No, we haven't started a single one of them. They've all been started locally by a group of local parents. All they do is use our model. And the subsidiarity is there. They are controlling the thing that most directly affects them. The solidarity is there. We're all doing the same thing, and so we are all supporting each other. So we have this solidarity with the school that's in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't think we have one in Phoenix, Arizona. We have one in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Same thing. But there's schools throughout the country. In some of the most unlikely places. We have 7 schools in California, 5 in Oregon, 2 in Washington, the most unchurched states in the country. So that's a great example of how localism works, and I've had the privilege of being part of implementing something like that. Now, as I said, everything is connected to everything else. That's one of Chesterton's lines, and it's something so important. The one special thing you do, the unique thing that you do in your business, is connected to what everybody else is doing in theirs. It's a matter of having the same mentality. What's our main goal? To bring souls to Christ. That's the main thing we're trying to do. God has given us certain gifts and skills with which we not only make a living, we serve a community, we serve a clientele. That's what we're doing. We're serving people in our business. And we're trying to help each other out. We're trying to help each other get to heaven. That's the whole goal of a guild. I was going to say one more thing about distributism, but I've completely blanked it out. But we're using the term localism, so here's what you do. If someone says, hey, I'm really interested in Chesterton's distributist ideas, and you just say, you mean localist, right? Okay, that's your job from now on. You mean localism, right? Oh, yeah, have you been talking to Dale Ahlquist? Huh? Everybody's saying localism now. Okay. All right, I am here to answer some questions, so please ask. When you ask your question, I will repeat it because there's no microphone on you, okay? So please, what would you like me to address specifically? Yes, please.
I remember I'm a Knight of Columbus member myself from the New Prayer Council, so I remember during the Ordinary Nights, that the Knights of Columbus had that same founding struggle because a lot of dads were basically dying in factories. The factory conditions were so bad that the wives and the kids would go destitute, and the families would be destroyed. So somebody from McGivney decides, hey, I'm going to help this. I'm going to start a order, and I'm going to start promoting men to promote masculine and Catholic values. So I remember reading the Knights, and I think it has the same founding reasons as localism, what G.K. Chesterton said. And I think the Knights of Columbus is a prime example of localism in our community as well.
So his didn't ask a question, but he made a good speech. In fact, he probably could have spoken much better than I have if he had. But he talked about the Knights of Columbus really do represent the same ideals as localism, and it was about taking care of families, and it was certainly both subsidiarity and solidarity, because every Knight has a local chapter, but they have solidarity with all the Knights around the whole country, and they are really one of the most influential and really powerful Catholic lay organizations, not only in the country and the world. I will say this, that in New Haven, Connecticut, where the Knights headquarters is, they just founded a Chesterton Academy there, and it's going to be called Chesterton Academy of Michael McGivney. Yeah. Right, so.
Yes.
I don't want to be insulting, but I'm old enough to remember when there was this really young Dale Ahlquist that used to have a TV show on EWTN, and I don't want to pick on anything because you're one of the smartest guys I've ever heard you talk. How many times have you said the word Chesterton in your whole life?
All right. The question for the camera was, and the answer is probably more than 30. Yeah, some number above 30. Yeah. All right. What else? Yes.
Thanks, Neil. It seems like we're in a sea change moment culturally with this whole AI thing, reading our necks. Is there a way that this localization movement can harness that, use that, as opposed to stick your head in the sand?
Great. Thank you for that question. The question was about AI. Is there some way that on a localist basis we can harness it, make use of it, or do we just stick our head in the sand and hope it goes away? Well, that second solution is simply not an option. There's a good chance that computers are not going to go away. I mean, at some point everything might get unplugged, and then we'll have to go back to handwritten things and things. We can hope that there'll be a massive power outage, but we can't plan on it. So Chesterton says in his book on St. Thomas Aquinas, and using Thomistic principles, there are no bad things, only bad uses of things. And we have been, for good reason, rightly terrified at the bad uses of AI. But it's the church's responsibility to baptize AI and use it for the glory of God. This is a tool that we can use for great good. So the sooner we become familiar with how to use it, then we can start using it for good. But we can neither be intimidated by it, nor can we think by ignoring it, it'll go away. But to condemn it as evil is absolutely not correct and not theologically correct. There are no bad things, only bad uses of things. And so let's always remember that. The internet, horrible, horrible things have come out of the internet, but great good has come out of the internet. And sometimes the good seems such a small portion of it, but it still is the good. People still find Christ on the internet. They might be looking for something else, but they find Christ. And, but think about it, even the printing press has been used for great evil. But it also gives us the Bible, right? And the church fathers. Yes?
So last year with one of our sons, we were touring a company in Plymouth. The man that was giving us the tour, Jack, is from Switzerland. And he was talking about in Switzerland and in other parts of Europe, they have guilds. So he was like 38 or 39, and it's a robotics profession. He said that in Switzerland, they actually, like, let's say you want to be a carpenter or a baker or even in like an office administrative assistant, they actually have guilds that you attend before you even like go to college or university or a trade school. Do you ever foresee anything like that coming back here? So let's say I have a son that wants to do electrical engineering or robotics, but doesn't want to go 4 years to a school or even 6 years. Do you ever foresee a time when Catholic businessmen and women will actually have like true guilds again? Like, I realize this is a guild, but I'm talking about a guild for a particular track or profession.
So the question was, do we see a potential return to the medieval guild system, which seems to be practiced to a degree in Switzerland? Switzerland is a perfect example of a small country with small towns, and things are local. It's amazing. And how it got taken over by the Protestants is such a mystery. But there are still places you can smoke in Switzerland, to their great credit. Okay, because they are great, they make cigarettes. I was in a town where they had a cigarette manufacturing company. Every flat surface in the town had an ashtray on it. Okay. But do we see a return? I think we're seeing some motions towards that. There are some more new Catholic trade schools being built around the country, and they're all happening at the same time. There's 3 or 4 new ones being built right now, and with Chesterton Academy, good example. Our school is not just for college prep. A lot of our students go off to a trade school right away. They've gotten the equivalent of a 4-year liberal arts degree, better than most colleges, and they're good thinkers, and they're ready to put their skills to use and learn to trade and have a family without the benefit of a $200,000 college debt. Instead, we can make them into donors to the school right away. But they have gone into exactly what you're talking about, though, is apprenticeship training under the skilled trades. Plumbers, carpenters. A lot of our graduates have gone right to becoming apprentices right away, and so it's very imaginable, and it's especially imaginable because of the dearth of people in those trades now, and it's fun to see how the Catholic Church has been responding by creating these Catholic trade schools again. So we're part of the movement. It's going to happen because we're going to help do it. That's why it's going to happen. It won't happen by itself. Yes?
Hilaire Belloc is a name I've been hearing come up more and more recently, but I've gotten a sense that even though he's connected with Chesterton, he's a little bit lesser known. I was wondering if you could tell us a little more about who he was, any recommendation for books that he wrote and books about him.
Sure, great. The question was about Hilaire Belloc, Chesterton's great colleague, whose name doesn't get mentioned as much as Chesterton, and that's because there isn't a Belloc society with some Belloc fanatic running it. and there are people who expect me to pick up the torch on Belloc, and I say, pick up your own torch and do it. Let's have a Belloc society. Belloc, an extremely important writer and a gifted writer. And the fact that he was such a genius and so prolific, at the same time with a friendship with G.K. Chesterton, the fact that these two individuals lived at the same time and were friends, it's unique in history almost, that such two geniuses would occupy the same space. Belloc, as opposed to Chesterton, was a lifelong Catholic. Chesterton is a convert. Belloc was a child of two worlds. His father was French and his mother was English. He was a French citizen, raised, he served in the French army, but considered himself more of an Englishman and settled in England and lived in England the rest of his life. He was the one who really turned Chesterton on to Pope Leo XIII in Rerum Novarum and did a lot to to explain the Catholic faith to him too, although he believed that Chesterton would never become Catholic, which is really funny. And he just marveled. He was in disbelief when Chesterton actually did join the Catholic Church. He actually wrote more books than Chesterton, but he didn't write as much total because Chesterton was primarily a journalist, and the bulk of his writing was journalist. But Belloc, like Chesterton, wrote fiction as well as nonfiction. Wrote several novels, and they were both poets too, and gifted poets as well. But there's no question that Belloc's great strength was in writing about history and economics, and he wrote about those topics more than Chesterton did. And so a couple of his main books to read would be The Servile State, very prophetic book, Economics for Helen, where he kind of describes all the principles of all economics and shows how the distributist, or what we call localist, solution is the most logical of them. It shows the weaknesses of both capitalism and communism. So both Adam Smith and Karl Marx. People forget Adam Smith was a Calvinist predestinationist. He was not a Catholic thinker. We're Catholics try to comfort themselves by saying Adam Smith was a Christian, but he was a double predestination Calvinist who said, some people are going to be rich because they were destined to be rich because God determined they would be, and some are not only already damned and going to hell, but some are just going to be poor, and sorry. That's what he believed, and people forget that. And so he was as much of a materialist, argues Chesterton, as was Marx. Belloc's other very important book to read is called The Restoration of Property. The Restoration of Property. Those three books are the most important starter books for Belloc. But you also want to read his verses, his cautionary tales, his poems for bad children. Like a trick that everyone abhors in little girls is slamming doors. A wealthy banker's little daughter who lived in Battersea, Bayswater, by name Rebecca Offendort, was given to this furious sport. She would deliberately go and slam the door like Billy Ho to make her Uncle Jacob start. She was not really bad at heart, only rather rude and wild. She was an aggravating child. Now, it happened that a marble bust of Abraham was standing just above the door this little lamb had carefully prepared to slam. And down it went. It knocked her flat. She looked like that. Her funeral sermon, which was long and followed by a sacred song, mentioned her virtues, it is true, but dwelt upon her vices too, and the dreadful end of one who goes and slams the door for fun. The children who were brought to hear the dreadful tale from far and near were much impressed, and inly swore they never more would slam the door.
When I'm trying to discuss distributism with hard-nosed economics types or business types, they always accuse me of being a poet and a novelist. And they say distributists are all poets and novelists, and they're all Francisists. And no real economists would ever embrace the idea of distributism. What say you?
I say that the thing about economists is that they're a bunch of stuffy academicians who have never accomplished anything of practicality in their entire lives. And a poet at least writes a poem. As I just demonstrated, Belloc did. Yes?
When you're discussing localism and trying to get people towards that hump of ethics-based purchasing, I feel that the majority of people just don't get it, even within our own Catholic circles. What have you found to be an effective way of communicating that and actually getting some converts on the localism bus?
Yeah, well, one of the things I said earlier, try to explain it this way. We are told to love our neighbor. We are supporting our neighbor by supporting a local business. That's a good act. But instead of buying something from our neighbor, buying it online from some remote distributor who we don't know what conditions his workers are treated in, but we have a suspicious idea how his workers are treated. That's an ethical act. And we have to just teach them that everything you do has consequences. Every act that you do has consequences. And everything should be motivated by love and not by selfishness. And we are acting selfish when we go for the lower price just for our own selfishness. It's a self-tax, but it's an act of love. And then you think harder about, well, what do you really need to buy? And what's gonna do better for my neighbor? Art should be for your neighbor. Everything you do should be for other people. And so it's a matter of just getting the focus off ourselves. But we do, Chesterton says all habits are bad habits. And you say, you tell them, oh, here's a great book you should read. Well, I'll get it on Amazon. No. Don't get the book from Amazon. It doesn't do any good to send your money to a river in South America. You want to give the money to your local bookstore, or give it at least to the publisher who's published the book. But don't give it to Amazon. But it's so easy. Oh yeah, so is going to hell. What is? Yes.
Perhaps a more practical question. As you have kind of helped scale the Chesterton Academy web across the country, how do you balance subsidiarity with making sure that they don't kind of go off the rails?
Great.
And also, what advice would you have to a business that's trying to scale to other branches that maybe national?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was about how with the Chesterton Academies, how do we scale things? Because we have many schools, but also how do we practice subsidiarity and solidarity? Well, we really do. We are doing an accreditation process, so we can go around and visit each school to make sure that they are actually teaching the same curriculum. So the one thing we do insist is you teach the same curriculum. But within that curriculum, there are variations. And in some cases, in a different local community, it may be appropriate to teach an entirely different segment that's more appropriate to that community. First, in a rural community, teaching just fundamental accounting and procedures like that will actually help them run their own business. We will replace a math class with an accounting class in that case. And so there's different local variations that we are open to that are suggested by those schools. But when they come in and say, well, we want to change this, this, and this, I said, well, you can, but you just won't be a Chesterton Academy anymore. And we won't stop them from leaving us because they want to do it their own way. But if they want the strength of the brand, as it were, which really helps their own students first in getting into college, the Chesterton name is now recognized, so we have to maintain a certain standard that they are teaching a certain curriculum. But it is a balancing act and a juggling act, and we don't say there's a code for how it's done, but you have to treat things personally and charitably. That's the way to do it. But we are getting big, but we're trying to have some regional centers that can take care of the regional area. And that way we're not trying to look at everything at once. We just want to get away from that. The fact that the schools are all started locally is still our greatest strength. We've never gone out and planted a school anywhere. It's been a grassroots movement. That's the whole strength of it. That's the strength of any Catholic movement, is that it's coming from the ground up. Yes?
Yeah, so what is the curriculum at the Hopkins School, and how does the tuition compare to other Catholic schools in the Twin Cities?
Our tuition is among the lowest of all private schools in the Twin Cities. There's probably only one other school that has a lower tuition than ours. And that was one of the principles in starting the school, is to keep the cost down. We're a pro-family school, and if you have a tuition that's too high, you can't be a pro-family school, if the school cannot afford. But then we also put together scholarship funds to underwrite those who can't even afford the lower tuition. Your question was about the curriculum. It's a classical curriculum, and so we start with ancient philosophy, ancient literature, ancient history, and the Old Testament. And then, for the next 4 years, you move right along. And everything that we teach is try to keep it integrated so that what you're learning in one class is connected to what you're learning in another class. It's completely the opposite of the modern education system, where everything has been separated from everything else. And there's no cohesive philosophy of what's being taught. And usually the emphasis is on the latest ideas and the latest trends. And so the public school model is just constantly changing. And Chesterton, over 100 years ago, said the problem in a school today is that a student is exposed to an educational philosophy that is younger than he is. Because we keep changing it. We have an ancient truth that we are continuing to teach. Yes?
So, everybody here, I feel like, is here because they're seeking something specific. How would you say the best way to reach people who aren't necessarily looking for this, and you can hear it? So, like, maybe in your parish, people who are caught up in kind of the way that everybody does things. What's the easiest way to start to turn people towards this and open their eyes to the possibilities that maybe there is a business that they should start, right? Or maybe there are opportunities around them for localism, for example.
Yeah. So the question is, how can we spread this mentality to people in our own parish? Because the world does not think the way we're thinking right now, and we have to realize we are going against the stream. And Chesterton says, the dead thing goes with the stream, only the living thing can go against it. So we have to recognize right away, we're just going to have opposition. The whole world wants to do things one way, and we are doing something completely different. But we start by saying, your business has to also reflect your faith, not you just accommodate your faith to whatever your business is. So that's the first change in the mentality there is, that we're going to actually make a statement of our own lives with how we live our day and how we earn our money, and so that's the first change in the mentality that we're teaching. And the world is going one way and we're going another way, but we're trying to serve the local community. We're trying to serve our neighbor, and that's why the idea of a small business makes more sense than joining the big giant corporation that doesn't have a local concern. There is, of course, one other thing we should point out, that for those types of businesses that require more employees, because there's many skill sets that are involved, to promote the idea of employee ownership, that everyone has a stake in what they're doing. And that makes for a more quality product and for a happier working atmosphere. But, it's going to be you have to find out what a person's interest is and find out, this is the way I'm doing it. You start by saying, this is the way I'm doing it. And I think this is kind of how the Catholic Church has to do things. We are all very unhappy as Catholics at how little influence the Catholic Church has in our society. Well, this is one way to start giving the Church more influence. It's not going to be by legislation. It's going to be by lifestyle. Basic. It's a really important question. Yes?
How many Chesterton academies have been formed by converting, so to speak, existing Catholic high schools, and what has that transformation looked like?
So the question was, how many Chesterton academies have been a result of an existing Catholic high school changing into a Chesterton academy? So of the, say, 70 that we have right now, I would say only maybe 10 have been existing schools beforehand that became a Chesterton academy. And generally, it's a school that is really looking to revive, and they know that things are going the wrong direction, and they just have to reboot their high school. And they like our curriculum, they like our system, and they say, we're going to become a Chesterton Academy. And it might be a slightly more than 10, but the most popular model has been just starting a new school from scratch. Yeah. And what part of the model means, don't build a high school, find some empty classrooms, because the demographics are such that every city has empty classroom space, because we've stopped having children. Oh yeah, sorry.
The Chesterton Academy, is there a nonprofit, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I was wondering, what is the first place to start? What any extra steps might there be in starting a specifically Catholic nonprofit as opposed to a secular?
Well, I mean, all nonprofit law affects all nonprofit organizations, whether they're religious or non-religious. So, but when you're going about starting a religious nonprofit, you state it in your articles of incorporation, and in some cases you're going to be treated differently, whether you're a religious or non-religious organization. Just in your reporting, in what things you can deduct in running your business, what your tax exempt status is going to be about, for instance, paying sales tax, things like that. But essentially, there's not that much difference from a purely legal standpoint of starting a religious or non-religious nonprofit organization. Do you have a more specific question to that?
Just the fact that there should be any involvement of the local diocese.
Okay, sure. In order to call yourself Catholic, you have to have the permission of the bishop. He controls that word. So you cannot call yourself Catholic unless you get his permission. All right. Yes?
Are there any lessons we can take away from, say, smaller communities in this region, say like Amish or Mennonite, that seem to have that localization embedded in their community?
The question was, are there lessons we could take from small communities such as the Amish or the Mennonites? And the answer is absolutely. They are, some of these small Protestant sects are a marvel in their humility, in their morality, and in their integrity in their work. But it'd probably be better just to convert them to Catholicism. All right, I'll take one more question, then we'll wrap it up here. Anything else? Yes.
Do you think of any magazine you would recommend?
We do. Visit our book table out there, and you can become a member of the Chesterton Society and get the best magazine in the world, Gilbert Magazine. Thanks for the question. All right.
I wish I had a pen and paper to write down notes to talk about things that Dale had mentioned. First of all, the buying local. It's a hard thing to understand. The worst example, few of you are going to hear it again, but I take my mom to a neighboring parish to Mass, and she wanted to go to Coffee and Rolls Sunday, so I took her there, and I asked the person that was passing out the rolls, where did you buy the rolls? Because I just wanted to see if he bought them at there's a grocery store chain whose owner is a member there, I was pretty sure. And so I said, where do you buy the rolls? And he says, well, we usually buy them at either Costco or Sam's. I says, oh, why don't you buy them at that grocery store chain? He says, well, yeah, once in a while we do, but he says, we have a budget, and if we buy them from there, we go over the budget. And so here we've got this grocery store owner that's a member. They're probably donating $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in Sunday collections. And then every time the church goes to pay down whatever fund drive they have, they're probably asking for $50,000 gift, and they won't buy their donuts and their rolls from there because they're more expensive. That's one. The other story was we have these bags at the fair here, and for a certain price, $50 or whatever, 75 different people could put business cards in the bag. And I had business cards coming from Vista Print and all around the country, but somewhere from here, but not enough of them. And to give you an example, so some of the guild business owners, they really, when you do business with them, they really get pumped, even if it's not a tremendous amount. So like one of the printers on the east side of St. Paul, we sent about 2 or 3 jobs, 2 or 3 guild members went to him in a row, like in a couple of weeks, and made orders. He got so excited that he called me and he offered to give the guild $100 a month in free printing because he could see the value of the guild members buying from him. And so that's a way to help the guild, is just to buy from the members. And the concept to think about is when you buy from a Catholic, you're investing in their family. When you buy from a corporation, you're investing in their company. So that you got to kind of keep that in mind. Then as far as the apprenticeships, that's one thing that we want to do as a guild. We want to have apprenticeships for things other than trades, even business. Like if you want to go into sales, there's no use getting a 4-year degree to go into sales. You could go to like Sadler sales management classes for 4 months and then maybe shadow somebody, something like that. But we got to get away from this $250,000 college degree for every last job there is. Right now in the guild, we don't have a lot of trades, but we have some, and we have in Unity High School. As soon as we get more contacts, they want to have a program where they're going to send their seniors to shadow with people in the trade, so they can figure out which one of the trades they would want to go into. So all these things are on the list, but we need a little more horsepower. And so the way you do that is you got to bring members in for us, and we're looking for members that want to give, not just want to take. Like some people, there's a consumer mentality, and that's not. We don't have a staff. That when we say the guild is you. The guild is everybody. It's not some corporate office. And if you don't have a lot of money to donate to the guild, just bring us members, because they pay dues. They bring us business members. They pay dues. They give sponsorships and different things. So, well, that's all I've got. One more. Did Dale leave? Is he still here? Okay, I was going to give him another round of applause. But so we've got. I think at 3:10, the Saintly Ventures will be in the same room as the lunches in the other hall, and that's going to be a great. It's our first time we've ever put that on, and so it'll be very interesting. But thanks again for coming. Appreciate it.